Good morning, everyone. How are we all doing today? I didn't expect to be nervous, but now I'm seeing you all. I'm like, actually, maybe I am a little bit, but that's fine. Can you all hear me okay? No. I wasn't expecting to have a microphone. I do a lot of gesticulation, so this might hold me back a bit. Thank you. I'm going to talk to you today on the topic of language, but from the philosophy of Musicians for Hearing, in which they contacted me. So I'm not going to give you a textbook definition of the word. Instead, I'm going to take you on a bit of a story on what it means to me. And hopefully, all I want to leave you with today is just a little bit more inspiration and thought about how lucky you are to have access to what you use to communicate with others. But before I do that, I'm going to talk to you about my love of triangles. And I know a couple of you are looking at my hair color and going, oh my God, hipster, that's fine. But I love triangles from a long time ago when I first came across them through Robert Sternberg's triangular theory of love. I don't know if anyone's heard of that before. Oh, great, I actually got a nod, amazing. He theorized that consummate or ultimate love was strongest when you had three ingredients. And these were passion, commitment, and intimacy. Now, you could have any one of these or any combination of the two, but the weakest of relationships had just one or two in opposite forms, and the strongest had them all three together as consummate or ultimate. Now, I don't know how good I am at romance, but I'm really good at bastardizing social theory, and what I took from this was to always find my three. So in anything that I do in life, I find my three reasons to love it and to work with it. And with Musicians for Hearing, it turned out to be exactly the same. We have three main aims. We're a non-for-profit. We want to fund hearing care in the developing world, promote deaf inclusivity in the arts, and also promote hearing awareness. And it wasn't until being asked to do this talk that I realized that our ultimate or our consummate love is actually language, or more specifically, access to it. Everything that we do is about promoting other people being able to partake in something that we love, the language of music or the language of just verbal or signed communication. Also, this is Susan. She's amazing. She's from Auslan Stage Left, so big thank you to her this morning. And also on that note, this is the first Creative Mornings that they've ever had an interpreter at, which we asked for today. And I'm just really grateful to Creative Mornings for doing that. Thank you so much. It's really good. Yeah, you can clap for that if you want. You don't have to. Okay, so I'm going to take you on a journey. We'll talk a little bit about the three aims and how they relate to language. And yes, hearing and hearing loss is going to come into it a bit because I'm an audiologist. Does everyone know what an audiologist is, or anyone not know? No, some people? Yeah, great, be brave. Have you seen those adorable videos of children hearing for the first time with cochlear implants? Yeah, I don't do that, but it's very similar. They're audiologists as well, but I work mostly with hearing aids and rehabilitation in that sense. So we rehabilitate hearing loss. The first thing that I wanted to talk to you today was about equality, and this encompasses our first aim, to fund hearing care in the developing world. We live in a very uneven and an unequal world, which we're already aware of. There's gaps in all terms of health, but hearing, ironically, is the one that we don't talk about very much. There's roughly 360 million people worldwide with a disabling hearing loss, 32 million of which are children. Only 11% of that 360 million live in high-income earning countries, which shows you how disproportionate it is that that disability is affecting more people in areas of low socioeconomic areas. There's one audiologist per 20,000 people in Australia, so one of me for 20,000 of you, but there's one of me for 1 million in poorer areas. If we go to sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, it's actually one of me per 5 million. The very real effect of that is ginormous. It doesn't matter how much you fund a school to be in a country over there where they can access education. If they can't access a language to use it, then they can't learn. And I saw this come to life recently in two examples when I was in Fiji. I was in a village and I was talking to a family, and there was a girl sitting separate from us, and she wasn't saying anything. And so I asked the family, what's her story? Who is she? And they told me that she was dumb. And what they meant by that for them is that she couldn't talk and she couldn't hear. So she'd lived her entire life separate from her family. She'd learned a list of chores that they could point to and she could do, but she'd never communicated with another single soul. And she was about 17, 18 years of age. Imagine going your entire life without ever sharing one word with another soul or any communication whatsoever. That's what happens to millions of people the world over. Another very clear example happened to me when I was in Cambodia volunteering, and I came across a boy who we'd tested and we'd found that he was deaf. And then we were like, okay, great. I put my audiology hat on and was like, okay, I'm going to test and see if he can condition. And what that means is, can he still respond to a normal test for his age? And he couldn't, which meant we need to get help. We need to get a pediatrician, we need a neurologist. And I stupidly, white privileged middle class girl, turned around to the other person on the dirt where we were testing him. I was like, right, who do I send the referral to? And he just looked at me and he's like, what referral? What ENT? What pediatrician? And that's kind of when it hit me. I was like, oh my God, this is where I am, and this is what it really is. There are people worldwide that don't have access to what we have and can't communicate. So our first point today is just to make you see how lucky you are that you have access to that. And that's our first aim, to try and get money whatever way we can over there so that we can reduce 1 in 5 million. Just before I go on, I'm going to go on a tangent quickly. The word dumb that I said before is really important to me. There's a stigma associated with hearing loss that is not like any other disability. It's one of the most social isolating disabilities that you can have. When I put on glasses, you instantly perceive me as more intelligent. But if I were to put on hearing aids or not hear what you say correctly, you instantly perceive me to be as less intelligent. And that's the world over. To the extent that deaf children, when they were first bringing in deaf schools, they weren't allowed to sign, they were told off, and they were constantly told in verbal communication and educated, and then called dumb for not receiving it, which absolutely blows my mind. There's this stigma that we have that if the message you send out of your body isn't received by the other person, it's their fault. And we put way too much emphasis on the listener. And I'll come back to that throughout today, that when you send out something from your body, verbal or signed, you have to pay respect to what happens in between. Are you speaking their language? Are you respecting that anything could have happened in between? Or did you just not send the message correctly? There's so many other areas that things could have happened. The second one, which I know there's a few musicians in the room, so it might be a bit controversial, is about longevity. Now, music is a language. It's also a drug. It hits the same areas of our brain as cocaine and sex and good food. We don't need it, but it makes us feel amazing. And loud music, like a double shot of whiskey, gives you a bigger effect of those pleasurable feelings. And we love it. But if loud music is a drug, we're overdosing. Back in the 30s, when they first invented amplified music, or amplifiers for music, it started getting louder and louder, to the extent now that on stage the average sound level is only safe for 15 minutes for musicians, which most of them don't know. They'll go through a 3-year education degree and not get 1 hour lesson on how to protect their ears, which blows my mind. And most musicians I talk to don't come to see an audiologist or to talk about their options, yet it's the very thing that keeps them having the access to their language. And again, it comes back to that stigma and to that fear. They're afraid that if they find out that they can't hear properly, that they'll be stigmatized for not being able to play, which they still can do. I know sound engineers who are in studios who are packed out, who wear hearing aids, but there's still that stigma associated with it. So I have this really weird thought, and I don't know if it's proven yet, but by asking musicians to help us help a child in another country or in a poorer situation hear music, I have this hope that that might motivate them to help themselves and to overcome that internal stigma so that we can reduce the rates, because it's currently at 74% of musicians have a hearing disorder, much, 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 much higher than the general population. 46% have tinnitus, and they're 4 times more likely to have a hearing loss than the general population, all because that's the part of their job, and it didn't used to be that way. So that's what we're working at. We want to try and keep musicians in the game longer, hearing what they love longer. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about today is inclusivity. Does anyone like listening to music in their own time? Yep, everyone's nodding, great. Do you know who you have to thank for that? Thomas Edison. Back in 1877, he invented something called the phonograph, which later became the gramophone and your record player, and now look how far we've come. He was deaf, and he wasn't completely deaf, not capital D deaf. He had a hearing loss where he couldn't hear speech, and he was quoted as saying from the age of 12, "I couldn't hear the birds sing." So from the very beginning, people with a love of music have someone who had a hearing loss to thank. Yet it is very, very rare that you see musicians or the music industry give back to those in the community of hearing loss. So another thing that we want to do, hello, I'm here, is invite people to share in music when they are deaf. I'm never going to speak on someone else's experience when I haven't lived it myself, but I do know for a fact that they feel vibrations more than we ever will when they're born deaf. The parts of the brain that would have processed sound instead process vibrotactile sensation and vision. So you can better be sure that when you're playing, they feel the beat that you're sending out, and they're singing the lyrics that you're singing and that you spent hours writing, and they're still getting the emotional effect from that. And it was really beautiful to see at our last concert that we did. I had a bit of an emotional moment, which I have all the time anyway, but watching one of the musicians play and seeing a deaf and a hearing person stand next to each other, unable to communicate with each other because they didn't have shared language, but yet they were standing there watching a musician communicate with them both. And that was really cool that even though they couldn't communicate directly, they were sharing and communicating via music. Now, I didn't know that music, I know music can transcend language and cultures, but I didn't know that it could transcend deafness until that point, and it really came to light. So rather than finishing the talk today, I think I've actually spoken quite quickly, which I thought I was going to go over time, but I haven't. I actually instead wanted to show you what I'm talking about. And you're in a room here where there's deaf and hearing people together. And I've asked a friend of mine, Jim, to come and play a song for you. And whilst he's playing, I want you to just have a moment to think of how lucky you are to access language that you use, but also that you're sharing it with people that you wouldn't otherwise have been able to communicate. So just give Jim a round of applause for me. He's going to come up. That was so fast.
This song is a song that I've written called A Stranger in My Mum's Eyes. Well, she held me close when I was young, and no sign of things to surely come. With the rise and fall of a distant star could make things that seem near turn afar. And the pages turn in my old school books, but I still learn more from your dirty looks. A reckless child, just running wild, trying to find my mother's smile. But I picture her in a long lost time, careless to the love she'd find. A handsome man to take her hand, and now shadows in a foreign land. So here I stand in full disguise, the stranger in my mother's eyes. just strangers from a time more blessed, and they fade away with every day. But the heart still holds what minds betray. So here I stand in full disguise, a stranger in my mother's eyes. Now who is this now that takes your son, and yet yields your faith till kingdom come? And what Holy Ghost would dare to boast about dealing out such tender woe? So here I am in sweet disguise, a stranger in my mother's eyes.